Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Ragu Bhargava about leading and measuring productivity in the new hybrid work environment. Ragu Bhargava, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm super excited for this conversation. Today, we're going to be focusing on all things hybrid work related. So we'll talk about the shift towards a more hybrid model in the workplace post-pandemic, but we'll also talk more specifically about leading and measuring productivity within this new hybrid work environment. As we get started, I wanted to share Ragu's bio with everybody. Ragu Bhargava is an experienced award-winning entrepreneur, financial executive, and leader. He helps clients successfully navigate some of the world's trickiest business environments. After immigrating to the US, Ragu co-founded his own company in 1999. Today, Global Upside Corporation and its four brands operate in 150 plus countries, with professional experiences ranging from being a CPA to heading dozens of international M&As. Ragu has leveraged his vast business expertise in scaling his companies to solve some of the most complex business challenges. Every day, Ragu wakes up at 4 a.m., armed with a smile and a sense of humor, to tackle every new challenge his clients face. He is available 24/7 to his team to advise, mentor, and support them. A great leader is one that helps groom the next generation, and Ragu does just that. Ragu, it's a real pleasure having you on the podcast today. Before we launch into the conversation, anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context?
Yeah, just one thing is that I've spent all my life in public company environments, from being controllers, CFO, and things like that, and done what controllers, CFOs of public companies do. Take them public, do acquisitions and stuff. So you covered all of that. And yes, we are very, very focused on success of our clients, and that's the one objective that we never waver from at Global Upside.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I as we launch into the conversation, I'm really interested in getting your take. You come to us from Silicon Valley, a tremendous, just very competitive, very energized corporate environment, steeped in tech and all things connected to what we're going to be talking about today. And during this pandemic, over the last 15, 16, 17 months, so many people have moved to a virtual environment, but as more people have been vaccinated, more organizations have started to shift to either coming back to face-to-face or more of a hybrid work arrangement with its employees. Let's start by talking about the hybrid work model, which has gained lots of attention. What's your take on hybrid work arrangements? And do you think companies are going to be able to utilize this successfully moving into the future?
Yeah, so let's just to set the bar, let's define what a hybrid model is, which is obviously some people are coming to work and some people are working from home. It can also be where those people that are working from home will show up to work X number of hours, X number of days, a week, a month. And some people that are regularly coming to work may from time to time work from home. So there's all flavors of hybrid models. Obviously, companies are struggling and being challenged by how do you deal with that? Because we all believe that being in the office is extremely important for building teams, the culture, all of that stuff, and creativity and innovation. Is that really important? I'm not sure anymore. The reason I'm not sure is because, look, for the past, I just use 18 months, we've been working from home. And I don't think the creativity in the Silicon Valley has stopped. I don't think that we have lost our culture. I think this is kind of the next evolution of our business cycles, of our environment, where now we're learning how to deal with those things on a remote basis. And so those people that are going to work from home forever, for an extended period of time, or coming to the work infrequently, we need to learn to assimilate them better into the environment. We need to learn to better connect with them, use our tools more effectively, so that these people don't feel like, oh, I'm this lone person in Idaho and nobody cares about me, or I won't get an opportunity for a promotion because I really don't know anybody at corporate, and things like that. So we need to evolve and work with these challenges so that we get to an answer that actually still works for us.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you've highlighted a really important point, and that is pre-pandemic. Yeah, there were certainly many companies that utilized remote workers. Yeah. There were hybrid work environments pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. There were fully 100% virtual teams that functioned perfectly well pre-pandemic. Yeah. But there were lots of holdouts pre-pandemic. There were lots of leaders, lots of organizations that really thought that wasn't for them. They thought that that's something that couldn't work well. And, you know, whether people liked it or not, they were kind of forced into it because of the pandemic. And so overnight, you flip the switch. Now everyone's working in a virtual environment. And what I found is many of those who are really hesitant to adopt the technologies that would accommodate, you know, and allow for a dynamic virtual workforce and virtual team, people forced into it quickly, many of them quickly found that, hey, this actually works really quite well. Yeah. And in some ways, there's a bunch of benefits that we didn't get when we were all coming together, you know, face to face all the time. And so I think there's a large number of people who have been converted, so to speak, to the utilization of technology and tech transformation and virtual workers and virtual teams and distributed workforce and all of that. But there's definitely still holdouts. And there's those that have kind of put up with the past 18 months of virtual work. They've hated it and they just are dying to get back to the office, and they want to be with their teams, both leaders and workers. There's definitely holdouts. And so I think that's where the hybrid environment really can be a nice accommodating model where you can, you know, some people who are kind of old school in their approach, you know, they can come into the office and they can enjoy time and the camaraderie with their peers and have that kind of physical interaction and with a little bit more flexibility so they can work from home from time to time. And then other people who have just really embraced the virtual world can continue to leverage that. You know, I am a professor. I teach at the local university. I've been probably 90% remote for the last close to year and a half. And I like it just fine. Like I go into campus when I need to, but most of the meetings we have, either we've discovered we don't need to have them, or we can do them just as effectively through Teams or Zoom. And, you know, I do miss being in the classroom with students, but there's many things that we can do to still have dynamic interactions with students in live synchronous virtual environments. And so I've loved it. And frankly, I would be happy, you know, working this way for the rest of my life, I think. But I have many, many colleagues who don't really feel the same way. And they're really dying to get back into the classroom. They're dying to get back to their office on campus. And I'm pretty happy sitting, you know, in my little workstation in the corner of my bedroom. So, you know, the hybrid environment really, the aim, the goal is like, let's tap into the best of both worlds. Let's accommodate preferences of different individuals on our teams. But then it gets back to what you were describing just a minute ago. And that is, okay, now that we have some people in person, some people remote, how do we make sure everyone's fully integrated into the team? How do we make sure that our culture, is pervasive across the team, regardless of geographic location, and everyone feels a part of the team and everyone has equal opportunity for projects and stretch opportunities and promotions and those sorts of things. And that's where I'm not sure we've figured that out yet. We already know that there's tons of, you know, roadblocks and biases that can hold back women in the workplace, for example, people of color and minorities in the workplace. That already existed pre-pandemic. And I'm really concerned about what that's going to look like post-pandemic, unless we're really mindful about that. So these are some of the things we definitely need to be wrestling with.
And I think one of the biases we've always had is that if you didn't come before your boss and you didn't leave after your boss left, it meant you weren't putting in your time. This kind of like mentally, we always thought about it that way. And what we now need to think about is not sort of the input factors that go into your job versus the output factors. So if you were required to complete a task and you had till end of day today and you got done at 10 a.m., more power to you, and more power to you to be able to take from 10 to 5 off and do whatever you want to do, correct? Because your objectives in life at work were accomplished and you're just more efficient than, say, your neighbor who actually cannot finish it till maybe tomorrow morning and has to stay up late night. And so the measurement has to shift, and as this measurement shifts, you actually see who are your more productive team members. You also learn to value them differently. Not necessarily to say that they are just valued more. Maybe that is one outcome, but the slower performer isn't necessarily a bad person, but needs to maybe find a different position in the company because they are more productive somewhere else, things like that. So that's really a mind shift of how do you measure somebody's productivity?
Yep. I think that's a really important shift in the way we think about outcomes in the workplace. I've often been frustrated about that because this expectation for face time in the office. And I worked, so years ago when I was early in my career, I worked at LG Electronics in South Korea at the corporate headquarters. And, the culture there is very much get there before the boss, stay until after. It's early mornings, late nights, and then you go off to karaoke or whatever after work is over, right? And so really long days. And what I found was most of the hours that most people spent in the office weren't very productive.
No, they are.
And so, that was in my early 20s. And I'm thinking at the time, I'm like, wow, there must be a better way for this. And, I love Korea. I love the culture. I don't mean to dismiss the culture, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, in the office setting, we do need to challenge assumptions and we need to challenge tradition a little bit. And what's the value in FaceTime? What's the value in the amount of hours someone has a butt in the seat doing the work? I am a fairly focused, productive person. And so if I can be really productive and still have, get a lot done, but still have really high quality and do it in 5 hours versus 10 hours, then what's the problem? Ultimately, the company still benefits, right? And I've posed that question to other people at times, and sometimes people will say, but you're the company's employee. They expect you to be working. And so if you can get that much done in 5 hours, then you should get double that in 10 hours and the company can get more out of you. And, I suppose there's some logic to that, but that's a recipe for burnout and just employee exploitation. So that's not a sustainable model. And one of the reasons I just love the remote environment is because, it's no longer are we measuring success based on how long someone's sitting in their chair. We've shifted the measurement. We're now looking at outcomes. We're looking at productivity metrics.
Yes.
We're looking at things like sales and client retention and those types of things that really actually matter and drive success for your firm. Frankly, I don't care if someone sits at their desk for 10 hours a day. If they don't get anything done, they might as well not be there. And so we need to definitely shift that conversation. And if people are working remotely, it's probably all the more important because we're no longer able to see who's there and what they're working on. We just have to give them, assignments, and we have to trust that they're going to do it. And so we need to measure outcomes. I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership: Ordinary, Everyday Actions that Produce Extraordinary Results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the Korean culture. I've spent 6 months working there myself. About 15 years ago, something like that. And yes, it's a very interesting environment. You're absolutely right the way you defined it. And one of the things that happens when you go to work anywhere in the world is that the water cooler, correct? You gather around it, you gather around the coffee machine, you take all these breaks all day long, and your productivity might be lower compared to when you're working from home, because who are you going to have coffee with? There's no water cooler. And as an example, my coffee consumption has gone down because in the office, there's always a coffee made. At home, I actually have to go make it, not complaining about that, but because it's not made, you don't want to make it every 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is. But there's a lot of change around this. And also, it allows employees to control their schedule, right? Which means somebody like me who's much, much more productive in the morning, I have done more by 10 o'clock than most people. I mean, many people don't even get to work at 10, which is fine. Not why are you coming late, but then they can stay up till 8 o'clock and work that shift. Whereas at 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm thinking like, hey, it's end of my day, allowing me that flexibility, which allows me to then have that better work-life balance. So the one challenge we all faced early in the pandemic was work and home was the same place. So you were sitting in your bedroom in the corner and working, and you just never knew when to turn it off. But then maybe some of us never knew when to turn it on because we were in our bedroom all day, correct? But that work from home and that culture that a company can push for to say, listen, guys, you've got to focus on your personal life as much as your work life, and stop at some point. It could be 8 p.m. for the guy who starts at 10, or it could be 4 p.m. for the guy who starts at 4, or whatever it is, correct? And what that allows you to do is have that flexibility, have that work-life balance where you can just say, yes, my kids come home at 3, I stop work, and I have a very productive, very satisfying life at home from 3 in the afternoon to whenever my kids go to bed. And that's because if you're more satisfied in your personal life, you are more productive in your work life. And then you're not bound by these, so to speak, shackles that say, hey, if I'm not at 8 to 5 in the office, then some supervisor is looking at me and saying, this guy is not working. He's not putting this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you're saying. There's no question that providing at least some level of flexibility around virtual work is going to benefit most employees and most employers. And so we definitely want to look for ways to empower people, to take ownership back of their lives and to have more of a balance and to develop their whole self and not just their careers. Because like you said, when people feel more well-rounded, when they have a strong, satisfying personal life, their work life is better, their productivity is better, and they're going to be more engaged, which of course is what we want in the workplace. With this move towards more of a hybrid environment, we're trying to be more accommodating. We're trying to help, people who want to be in the physical office, those who want to have more flexibility, be working remotely. But the challenge is, how do we integrate them together well? So what systems, what processes need to change in most organizations to be able to accommodate that?
Yeah, I think there's a play on both technology as well as non-technology solutions, correct? So better usage of Team or Microsoft Teams or Zoom, or there's lots of options nowadays, correct? That's one way to think about how do you integrate people, because you can have them on calls and a video call like you and me talking right now, right? Even though who knows if you will ever meet in person, but I kind of feel a connection to you, and we can have this conversation. And especially if you're on opposite coast, I mean, imagine trying to do this live, correct, in person. But then there is the non-technology part of, like, you cannot just say because we're having this Zoom call once a day or once a week, that's all you need. Maybe once a month, once a quarter, on a periodic basis, and you want to have everybody get together or get together in smaller teams, to connect with people, to say, oh yeah, now I actually know you because I've been talking to you for the last 3, 6, 9 months, but now let me shake your hand and feel that bond strengthen. And these aren't just activities you want to do by just saying, hey, let's put everybody in a room and let it happen organically. This is more about possibly doing a training program around, things that are business related, on things that are, networking related, right? Because how do you connect with somebody? How do you feel comfortable that I can pick up the phone and do a video call with John versus just doing a Zoom meeting when it's scheduled by our managers? Because that's how you build that relationship, right? That's how that cooler event happened, that the coffee pot event happened. You just walked there, somebody was there, and you start talking to them. So why don't you pick up the phone and do a FaceTime call or a video call with somebody? There's also, allowing teams to get together and do non-business events. So let's all possibly go out for half a day of golfing or something like that. And golfing can still be construed as a non-team building type environment because you're just in a group of 4. You can do other events where you have a broader participation, and things like that. So, and then there are certain other tools that, many companies are coming up with and utilizing, where you can have a much broader audience. For example, you can then go from table to table, like in a networking type session, and talk to these 2-3 people here, and then you go over for another 5 minutes to another table and stuff. So those are tools that, obviously the innovators are coming up with because they're seeing and understanding the need, and companies need to actually focus on those and say, listen, let's bring that into the workspace so everybody can benefit from them, and people feel connected to each other.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm also curious. I know our time is getting short, so we'll need to wrap this up soon. But one final question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. You're in Silicon Valley. Are you aware of like any what's like the newest, the best new kind of technological opportunity coming down the pipeline in terms of hybrid and remote work?
There are these they're kind of what I call a combination of Zoom, Microsoft Teams type combination tools, where they can allow a lot of people to gather and interact with each other. They can also be where, like for example, companies used to have an all hands, and the CEO or the management would stand up and talk to people. And so you have 50 people, 100 people, 5,000 people in these meetings. And when the CEO wants to do a little presentation, you can actually mute everybody. At the same time, you can then open up. So we've used a tool that allowed you to move from group A to group B and you could see who was in the group, and you can walk over virtually. And as you got closer, you could start hearing their conversations, whereas the group you were leaving, they would fade away. And so those are tools that are resemble real life. Because if you went from group A to group B, you would lose some hearing from one group and gain some hearing from the other one. And those tools are actually very, very efficient in terms of replicating that real environment. And it worked out very well. I unfortunately don't have any names because our marketing department creates all of these events, and we just go attend and stuff. But they're pretty awesome tools.
Yeah, well, that's really great. I've been using Zoom, I've been using Skype, for years, for over a decade. But one of the things that I've seen that's gotten better and better over the past year is just the ability to do breakout rooms and those sorts of things, which at the beginning of the pandemic still were pretty rudimentary. And so it sounds like those are getting better and better, which is probably the biggest limitation currently, in a lot of systems, to be able to have an engaging, virtual kind of an environment when we're getting together with lots of people. So that's wonderful to hear. Well, Ragu, it has been a pleasure talking with you. We could go on and on, but I do want to be mindful of your time. Before we close today, I did want to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, so, you can go to our website, look me up there. I am on LinkedIn, Ragu Bhargava, easy to spell, easy to find. If you want to send me an email, you can send it at Ragu, RAGU, at globalupside.com. And I will respond, hopefully in a good time. And just as a final word, we need to find the right mix for the hybrid model, and keeping in mind the needs of the employer, the company, as well as the needs of the employees. Because you cannot just have a very biased model favoring the employees only or favoring the company only. Neither one will work. And just like we've always found a solution that will work in person in the office, we will find a solution to make it work in a hybrid model.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ragu. It has been a real pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out to get connected, find out more about Ragu and what Ragu and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.
We are excited about the launch of HCI's new magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine designed to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We will be publishing issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Check out the first issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.